to the South Fork Bike Fitting, Max Testing and Tech Centre. We're doing a max test today with Blake Pond. Here is Crocker, the other size of the JBST podcast. Over to Crocker for the presentation from SouthforkRacing.
Right guys, today we're here to do the max test for Blake. We've just set up this area recently in the shop. We've combined a little bit more of kind of our road riding / track alongside to coincide with the workshop that we've got. So fully kitted out workshop. It helps us build and grow the business in the direction that it needs to go. So today, this gentleman here will be sweating and cycling his heart out for the amusement of all you guys on the other end of this. So the best of luck, and hopefully you'll get some good info / reality checks on what it's like to do a max test.
Okay, so it's over to Blake now. We're going to leave him at, he's starting at 100 watts and he's going to go up 20 watts per minute. We will move out of the frame and give you some more information to camera. See you later. So we're starting now. So those that are doing their own max test, you start at 100 watts. So Blake has set his Garmin underway. Try and stay as close as possible to the required wattage. For some, you will be doing it on your small chain ring at this point. For others, it will be large chain ring, depending on the resistance of the tyre on the rear roller and also the actual roller's resistance setting. This is the easy bit. This is the bit where the temptation is to want to get on with the test and to do more work than is required. This is a patience game. This is the easy end of it. You are gradually taken into this test, and it is important not to overexert early on. This is not where we measure somebody's fitness. We can measure somebody's potential improvements in fitness by looking at each of the 20 watt increments and what the rider's heart rate is. At this point, Blake is now at 120 watts. The heart rate will be gradually climbing, and it is his task to keep nice and controlled. At this point you can see that Blake is sat in a comfortable position. He's chosen to start on the big chain ring. There's a drink to hand which can be useful if you get a dry throat early on in the actual test session. You won't be reaching for the drink by the end of the session, though you might want to sip something immediately afterwards. Blake's now gone to 140 watts, just controlling the pedalling. You can see visibly there is a heart monitor around his chest that is transmitting to the Garmin on the handlebars. So 140 watts, around 124, 125 beats per minute. As the test increases, you will hear a greater resistance going through the rear wheel. At this point we are 3 minutes in and it goes to 160 watts. If you are doing a test at home, it is better to have somebody with a clipboard, pen, and to tick off each of the respective increments. When we get to the business end of the session today, I will be urging Blake to keep going. I will be reminding him what wattage he is doing. It gets quite difficult and there can be lapses in concentration. So to have somebody with the clipboard that can tick off each respective increment allows you to be able to keep on your target wattage. What you don't want to do is to overexert or to get the test wrong. For things to be correct, we need to make sure we keep things in exactly the same protocol. Now we are at 180 watts. For an average age group triathlete, this is quite normally around their power for an Ironman distance race. Sporty riders, quite often over 6 hour plus events, can be at 180 watts. Higher level performance means you have more wattage, therefore the expected outcomes for a race, a sporty, a triathlon, a time trial will be different. Today we are expecting to get numbers that are very high. At the same time, we can relate those numbers for you such that you can get the correct outcomes for your training and for your pacing and for your intervals. We're now at 5 minutes in. That is 200 watts. 200 watts with the heart rate just going into the 140s. 90 RPM. The cadence is being taken from a sensor on the left-hand chainstay. Thank you, Blake. So, settling in. This is within Blake's zone 1, so comfortable, breathing's fine, effort is very relaxed. 220 watts, you can hear that very subtle increase in effort. The more that you ride on power, the more that you can absolutely get this subtle change of pace. Those that don't ride on power see that they often have sudden surges. It is a subtle increase in your effort. So we are 6.5 minutes in at 220 watts and the heart rate is 145.
So the next increment of power will be coming up at 7 minutes. That will be 240 watts. You can hear the subtle increase in the power going through the Cyclops trainer, just increasing the amount of resistance.
We're now approaching 8 minutes. At 8 minutes it will be 260 watts. The heart rate is just into the 150s. So that is a smooth 260 watts. The deviation that I can see on screen is only about 3 to 4 watts either side. The more controlled that you are, the better it shows your ability to keep smooth. Riding on power is all about trying to ensure that you are doing what is required. That may be the required interval effort, it may be the required steady state endurance effort. To get surges in power may not be the best thing to do. If you are a road racer, you need to practice surges in power, but you don't need to repeatedly do it all the time on every ride. Sometimes control is the better form of training. 280 watts. 9 minutes in, heart rate is just approaching 160. How do you feel, Blake? Average. Everybody at this point, it's like 2 or 3 days before race. You kind of know what's coming, therefore you kind of are a little bit apprehensive. The important thing is to stay on plan. A max test is about failing at some point. You do not succeed by beating wattage. You will always, always, always hit fatigue. This is a ramp that goes up and up and up. At some point you will fail. If you have given your best effort, that is all that can be asked. 10 minutes in, the magic 300 watts. That equates to approximately 25 miles an hour for an average position on a road bike. On an aero position, time trial or triathlon bike, 300 watts for a 70-75 kilogram rider will be significantly faster than 25 miles an hour. We are not at anywhere near Blake's race wattage, but we are starting to get into the realms of higher workload. And at 300 watts, he's now having to concentrate and is watching the effort to ensure that he doesn't overexert. 11 minutes, 320 watts, 167, 68, 69 beats per minute. So we are getting to the business end, the focus end, and the point of a max test. It will only get harder from this point. So it is vital that the person receives the correct information and receives motivation. What we do not want to do now is to try and get anything extra that is required at this point in time. We still have an additional 8, 7, 10 minutes or so to go. So this is a point at which many people are reaching their max here on in the next 5 to 6 minutes. We will go beyond the average data to a point where the numbers can still be related back to you, but they won't be numbers that you can necessarily try to actually beat. With many max tests, once a rider is trained, we rarely see massive increases unless they have been poorly trained, unless they have had ill health or significant time off the bike. 12.5 minutes, currently at 340 watts, heart rate at 173. Sorry? Yeah. 13 minutes, 360 watts.
At this point, the increase in time and effort is showing in the degree to which Blake is sweating. If you want to have a towel or a cover on your bike, it can be useful, but this is the point where hard work is only going to get harder.
Minutes, 380 watts, 178 beats per minute. Okay, the next increment is up to 400 watts at 15 minutes into the max test. Remember, we started at 100 and we added 20 watts per minute. Watts, 91 revs per minute, 183 beats per minute heart rate. Blake is in the middle of the rear cassette on the large chain ring. And we now have 420 watts. This max test would be done similarly. If you came to Southfork, you would be max tested. And this is what you do. From this, we take away the peak power and the maximum heart rate in order to correlate to training zones, to what training you've been doing of late, and how to improve your performance. Blake is now going to 440 watts. 440 watts, 17 minutes in. We are trying to keep him as smooth as possible. If you stay smooth, you do not overextend yourself too early. I will now switch to the focus on Blake and you watch what is going on. That's it, that's good, that's good, that's good. That's good, mate, that's good. That's it, you're 2/3 of the way through. That's it, keep on top of this, Blake, keep on top of this. That's really good, really good, really good. Come on, come on. That's it, that's excellent, that's excellent. That's really good, really good, really good. Right, we've got 5 more seconds and we go up a notch, mate. 5 more seconds and up a notch. This is it, remember, this is it. This is what you're training for, this point now, okay? We are 18 minutes in, 460 watts. Come on, keep on top of this, Blake. I want you to focus on that number and keep on top of it. This is really good. Keep on top of the number. That's it, that's good. Just keep that memento. That's brilliant. This is what you're training for. This is what you're training for. This is good. This is good. Come on, Blake. Come on. Dig in. This is the end of the test. This is where you've got to start to really focus. Really focus. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. At a point where the heart rate starts to shoot and the rider cannot stay on top of the power, you realise that there's a maximum effort. It's been hit at that point and the power has gone to its point where you cannot continue. The lactate buildup will stop your leg muscles. The screen data had regularly 470, 480 at that point. Heart rate was into the 190s. Blake is profusely sweating. The heat buildup is creating a lot of sweat. This is quite common in a max test. At this point, it is very important to decrease the gear, to turn the legs over very, very easily and allow the lactate to dissipate. This is similar to professional cyclists at the end of tour stages, sitting back on a turbo and reducing the lactate, taking the tension out of the muscles, allowing the rider to get themselves back down to normality, to allow them just to clear their head and just to bring themselves back down. Again, this is a max test brought to you by SouthforkRacing. For further details, see the website. Thanks, Blake. Right, so here we are post-test, all important. Blake has washed down, got warm clothing on, and got his cup of coffee. We're going through the data. We have downloaded the data. There are various options that you can put your data into. Garmin Connect, Strava, for Mac users, also a laptop, desktop piece of software called iSmart Train. There's various options. What you are looking for, most importantly, is the maximum 1 minute power. From the test, we have a maximum heart rate of 190 and we have a maximum 1 minute power from the data that says 460 watts. That was from 17.5 minutes to 18.5 minutes through the test. So that gives us our peak power, 460. From that, you can then take a percentage of that number to approximate what pacing would be. For Blake, 460, if we times that by approximately 0.75, that gives a 345, maybe 350 watt 25 mile time trial, maybe slightly higher because he will be doing it in under an hour, but in theory the FTP is perhaps somewhere at the moment at about 350 watts. The 10 mile time trial effort would be somewhere around 370 watts, maybe slightly higher as the season progresses up to 380, 390 and so on. So we have data, it is using that data, it is taking the numbers in heart rate and power in order to project zones. If we have 190 beats for Blake's heart rate, that predicts that his top of base endurance level is 152 beats. At 153, 154, etc., the lactate will build and it won't be base training, it will now be tempo work, it is now competitive, it is now not being absorbed as base work. So if you take the numbers you get from a max test, times it by 0.8, and that gives you that all-important limit as to where base training is. So Blake, you did the business end of it. What do you think about the numbers? What does it tell you about your situation at present?
Well, sort of into the end of the base training period for myself now.
Yeah, yeah.
Going to start doing some more race specific
intervals
coming up soon.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'm relatively pleased that of where I am, and hopefully I can move that on a little bit as the race season starts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the numbers in terms of heart rate and power, how do they relate to previous data?
Max heart rate is pretty much unchanged. The power is slightly down on previous years. Obviously that's from the situation being a bit sick last winter. So yeah, but where I am, I'm pretty pleased. So can't complain too much.
But 190 beats is to within a few beats of previous max tests. Yeah. Okay. And the wattage the heart hasn't changed, so we know that you're doing a maximum effort. What we don't know is the data we have today, which we were taking from several units, may well be different to previous data that has been got in a lab on perhaps an SRM unit. It's been perhaps on a power tap unit. It's perhaps been done on various systems that are not all talking exactly the same currency. If that difference is even 20 watts, which we've seen on the same manufacturer producing a different version of that power measuring system, 20 watts is the difference between a very pleased athlete and an athlete that thinks they're not going quite so well. And if you get to within the ballpark, actually it's about tweaking your zones in power terms and heart rate terms to make sure that you don't just assume you're at the previous power level, because the power meter may be measuring a different currency, and what that might mean is that you actually need to just slightly change the numbers that you were using for your previous base training and the numbers that you were using for your racing. It's always good to build up a database of your power so that as we go through the season we can see Blake's power in time trials, in road races and so forth, and that should all correlate back to really this test right now, saying that number made sense, and although it might increase over time, that number is what we are just tweaking from time to time. We expect Blake's to increase slightly as his performance on the bike from a winter post-op through to spring actually increases, and 4 months after an operation, actually 460 watts is a very strong effort. Yeah. So and the heart rate often is the thing that we need to look at. Heart rate very rarely changes significantly. That's the zones. That's the things that we need to we need to keep in mind. And if you take that number, 0.8 times your maximum will give the top of your base training. That's not the place to aim for, that's the top point, and you could be as low as 0.6, 0.65 of your heart rate. And then your threshold is around about 0.86 to maybe 0.89, maybe even 0.90 of that maximum heart rate. But there will be a download via jbst.com, so you can just use your numbers when you duplicate the max test that we've done today to allow you to get your training zones. Once again, this is brought to you by SouthforkRacing. Thanks for your effort today, Blake.
No problem, mate.
Really good.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much.
Okay.